Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. My name is Suzanne, and I'm the head coach at G.R.A.C.E Financial Coaching. And today I am talking with Steve Kent. He is a financial advisor who owns his own financial services firm, Steve Kent Financial Services. And Steve works with individuals, families, and small businesses with the goal of educating them on how money works, allowing his clients to dream again and realize that everyone can achieve their financial goals. Sounds like we have very similar beliefs there, Steve. How you doing?
Well, all right, I'm doing very well. Thanks. I appreciate the
Good.
opportunity.
So tell us about your financial services firm. How'd you get started? How long ago?
So I've been involved in personal financial services since the late 90s. For the first few years, I was helping clients achieve financial freedom, doing all the things that I loved, services they needed. And then for reasons that I'm still not sure, I left the field. And again, hindsight's great, but I left the field and gave up my licenses. But because I loved to do what I was doing, I was still helping people understand financially their strengths and their challenges. And I would sit with an individual or family and say, this is where you are. This is the plan of what you should do. But because I'm not licensed, I can't help you go the rest of the distance.
Right.
And they loved the plan. They saw the outcome. They saw everything. But then I get I'm not sure if I want to fill out the paperwork, or I'm not sure if I want to call up the company. So they understood the challenges. They understood the solution, but they didn't want to go that little bit further. And I wasn't able to do that legally.
Oh, okay.
So 2021 came along and I was like, that's it. I'm done. I have to get back into it and actually help people take that extra step where they wouldn't before. So I've been back in the game full time for the last almost 4 years and loving every minute of it.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. It really, I love the old adage of, do what you love and you won't work a day in your life. But and sometimes you're just not going to love what you do. You're going to work a job and you're going to go to work and you're going to get paid, and that's what's sustaining your family and your livelihood and all that stuff. But it really is rewarding to hear other people who enjoy what they're doing. It gives I'm sure it gives your clients a sense of, I don't want to say relief. I'm trying to think of the right word, like a sense of like, all right, you know what? Not only is this his job, but he's following the market. He's following the industry information. Even though you weren't in the game for a little while, I'm sure that interest prevailed throughout the entire time.
Correct. And when I sit down with anyone, and I've learned this through experience and watching other people do what I don't believe is the right way. So if I'm going to sit down with Suzanne, typically what I see happening, and again, this is not a blanket statement. It's typically what I see happening is we're going to sit down and I'm going to say to you, Suzanne, tell me from a financial perspective what's going on. Tell me all about you. Then I would tell you my story, which is great, except what I found out was I would then cater or tailor my story around you to try to build a relationship. So what I do is I now say, Suzanne, thanks for meeting me. Let's have a conversation, but I'm going to tell you about me first. So you understand my history. You understand that I lost my wife, that I went bankrupt, that I had a business that failed. You understand all the things about me first. Then you tell me about you. So therefore, you're not hearing what you want to hear. You're hearing the truth first. So
That's
to me,
great.
I think that's a big, big difference in the way I, help people and approach it than other people.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because a lot of people will tell you, oh, let the other person talk. They want to talk about themselves. I am
Yes.
not, ironically, I have a podcast where all I do is talk to people about money, but I am actually not that person. I'm not very interested in myself. I
Okay.
actually would prefer to hear what's going on with the other person, catching up with a friend, seeing family I haven't seen in a while, I really would rather prefer to hear what's going on with them. I don't particularly find my own life that to be that exciting. But that is a good way to look at it, in the sense that you're not trying to sell the client by spinning your story in a certain way.
Correct.
You may not even know if the person has lost a spouse, but if you're starting with that, that person could either go in one of three directions, where they may not be married. They may have lost a spouse also, or now they're starting to envision, oh man, what would happen if I lost my spouse? And that can open up a conversation that maybe wouldn't have been opened up with a different financial advisor.
Correct. As a general statement, finances are one of those things that people really don't want to open up about. And I understand that, because I was that way too.
Yep.
But if you understand more about the person who you're speaking with first, of those issues, challenges that you have, you may be more willing to open up as opposed to not. And when you open up, now we can better understand where you are and have a good plan to get you where you want to be.
Yeah. It's people who have listened to this podcast numerous times have heard me say once or twice before that we talk about sex, politics, and religion in this country more than we talk about money, and we need to change that if we're going to move forward together.
Absolutely, that's correct.
So you're based out of New York. Who are you able to work with? Who do you like working with?
So I'm based in New York. I'm currently licensed in 10 states. And it's easy to get to other states, so that's not an issue. My ideal, my ideal person or family to work with is really one of two. One is people who are 45 to 55. And that's because, and you've heard, I'm sure, of the sandwich generation.
Oh, yes.
So in a lot of cases, that age range has young kids that may or may not be saving for college. They may or may not have parents that they're tending to from a long-term care perspective. And they're now saying, and this happened to me, I was taking care of my parents. But I know that not only the time, but the financial side of it, they didn't prepare. So I want to make sure that I'm prepared so my kids don't go through what I'm going through or what I went through at the time. And the other thing is, in that 45 to 55, with all that other stuff going on, chances are they're not saving for their future.
Yeah.
They may not have the money. They may not be aware of it. Again, people have never been taught personal financial services. They don't know. So if you're living day to day, now you get to that spot in your late 50s, early 60s, and you're like, uh-oh, I have a problem here. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, it's for those who don't know, the sandwich generation is typically referred to as those who are finding themselves either with children, helping children pay for college while also helping their elderly parents, or their children have boomeranged and come back into the house after college. And now we've got 3 generations living under one roof, whereas that might have never happened before prior to that sandwich generation person's experience. So
it's 3 generations, but it's typically off of one income.
And then the real issue is all 3 generations are probably not bringing in income.
Correct.
It's typically falling on that person who we're referring to as the sandwich generation person. So it's we've talked about that on here before, so I'm sure people will be familiar with it. But it's scary, and I'm going to go a little bit further. I'm going to say I know several people who are in that window, and they're in they're 65. You know, so it probably even goes beyond the 45 to 55. If you've got somebody who's 70, whose parents got married when they were 20, that person can be sandwich generation also. Their kids could be coming back into the house after college or after a bad divorce. So I'm seeing it. I see it happening with a neighbor right now, actually. It is very difficult. And
it is.
The focus on other people, you kind of, and this goes for pretty much everybody, but you find a lot of people will focus on others first.
Right.
And all of a sudden they will wake up, and I'm just going to be real dramatic here, guys, but you've been taking care of mom for 15 years and mom dies tomorrow.
Right.
And the loss of focus on what you should have been doing with your finances for the last 10 to 15 years that you were taking care of mom, you don't get to restart that.
No, you
clock.
don't. You don't. So I'll give you an analogy that I kind of thought of the other day. People in their 50s, 60s, to your point, I want to help my kids. I want to help my parents. I want to help. So here's the analogy. Have you ever flown an airplane? Or flown in an air. Let me rephrase that. Flown in an airplane. Okay, so now you have the staff, the flight staff, the attendants. They go through their, here's the seat belts, here's this, here's that. But then they get to the mask. If oxygen fails, the mask falls. What do they tell you?
Put it on first. Put it on yourself first, right?
The same thing when it comes to finances. It's great to want to help other people, and I want to help my kids who are in their 30s. But if I am not to a point where I can do what I want to do now and in the future, how do I take care of my kids? And I know it's a kind of a rough example, but and everybody wants it. And I want to also. But if you don't have your own house in order, how do you help other people?
Right. And how can, and like I said, you don't get that time back.
Correct.
So you've got to do it, even if you're listening to this and you've been taking care of mom for 5 years, well, let's start now. It's better than starting in 10 years.
Correct.
And it's, most of the time when I see it, it's focused on kids coming back into the house, or there's some sort of guilt around not being able to pay for kids' college in full, which if you are capable of paying, we'll go to the other side of the coin. Let's talk about the kids now. If you're able to pay for college in full, or like you think you're able to pay for college in full, when some of the schools that my siblings and I went to are now getting close to $100,000 a year.
Wow.
You're either, bringing in $1 million a year, or you're kind of giving yourself a goal that's not attainable.
Right.
And then you're going to put this guilt on yourself about it. And that's not going to help anybody.
No. So here's my sarcastic comment. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So the student grows up, goes to college, takes a loan. What is that loan called?
A student loan.
Bingo. Thank you. So I'm guilty. My kids had student loans. Dad paid for them because dad didn't understand how to save and didn't file a FAFSA form. Big mistake. Different conversation. But I didn't know. I paid for two. Well, my daughter started and stopped, so I paid for 1.5. But even so, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So any aid that might have come to help me out as the parent wasn't there because I missed on a whole bunch of levels.
Yeah. We could also spend another 45 minutes talking about FAFSA and all the changes that happened earlier this year and what an absolute disaster it's been. But we only have so much time here today.
Correct. Round two. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So, the main part of this show is asking people what the silly or stupid things they've done with money. So what would you say is yours, Steve?
So I came out of corporate after 32 years and knew probably less than zero about opening a business. And that's just the way it is because corporate does everything for you.
Yes, absolutely. They do. Your email address is handed to you the day you walk in, right?
Oh, it is. It is.
Yeah.
So in 2012, I looked around and found what I wanted was to buy into a franchise. And again, having no clue, didn't know what questions to ask, didn't know who to trust. And it just went on and on and on. I was provided with the purchase price for this franchise, which was $240,000. What I should have done, but again, did not know, was I paid the entire $240,000
In full.
up front in full instead of paying 20%, which would have been 48,000. Now,
Mm.
what that meant was as the business opened in January of 13, my working capital was significantly diminished.
Oh,
And
right.
opening up a new business, you have a whole bunch of startup expenses. Didn't take a salary for 2 years, and I will tell you it went south very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Franchises are fickle. It is really I've spoken to people who uh had success within their first year. Most of the
Mhm.
people I've spoken to,
Right.
within 5 years as the statistics go,
Mhm.
did not have success within those 5
Mhm.
years.
Well,
There's so many factors with a franchise.
right. Well, I will be fair, and I agree with you 100% on franchises. I will tell you, in my case, it was not the franchise.
Okay.
It again, my case was not the franchise. It was a complete lack of financial education.
Wow. Yeah.
As
It's
simple
and
as
I really that the fact that you're owning up to it
it
is,
was
a
as
lot of
simple,
people would blame other factors.
right? It was everything from putting should have put down 20% instead of paying for the whole thing. It was as my working capital continued to decrease on a rapid basis, I started putting working capital on my credit card as
Oh.
personal loans.
Yep.
Um, and it just continues on down. So in my case, again, it's not the franchise, it was my lack of financial education.
Mhm.
And it went so far, and I'm not ashamed to say this, even though it hurts. It got me into such trouble that in 2015, I declared bankruptcy, personal
Gotcha.
bankruptcy. It took me 5 years to work my way out of it. And it was a very tough 5 years because, again, you can't get credit. What you do get, the rates are much higher and all those things.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the reason that I went back into personal financial services in early 21, because everybody has, or everybody should have, a why statement. Why do you do what you do? And mine is very simple. I'm using my experiences to help other people not make the same financial mistakes I made. That's why I do what I do. And when I can sit there with a family, an individual, a business owner who have no clue, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes off, you can see it in their eyes, their smile, the feeling of you've gotten through to somebody and you're starting to change the mindset for them to become financially free, which will take a while, but you have to
Oh,
start
yeah.
somewhere. That's the most amazing feeling around,
Yeah.
to know that you've
That's
helped somebody.
I love the point you just made,
Yeah.
that becoming financially free takes a while.
Mm-hmm. It does.
A
It
little
does.
while, a long while. It depends on your definition of financially free, right? What do
Correct.
you
Correct.
consider that? Do you
Right.
consider that no longer working, period? Or do you consider that just having a savings account and still going to work every day? Do
Correct.
you
Right.
consider that
Right.
traveling through Europe for 5 years, during
Mhm.
retirement? Or do you consider that being able to leave your job and staying and watching your grandkids during the day? So we've it
Yep.
it's the why statement is
Mhm.
so important.
Right.
I remember actually
Right.
working with somebody
Hmm.
who didn't know what their why statement was.
Hmm. Okay.
And even after 45 minutes,
Okay.
it was like pulling teeth. And she just came to this realization
Mm.
that, and actually, you know what her realization was? Her why statements kept going, kind of just full circle about our whole conversation here. Her why statements kept going back to other people.
Mm.
I want to be able to help my mother. Oh, okay, well, That's kind of in your budget. You're already helping your mother anyway. What do you want?
Right.
Well, my brother went through some tough times. I want to be able to help him and his kids. Okay, we already talked about other people. Now, and it just kept coming back to other people. And at the end of the meeting, she realized she did not have her own why statement.
A lot of people don't.
And what would have been the point of really, I said to her, I said, I kind of need you to figure that out before we attack whatever financial issues, quote unquote, air quotes, or problems or questions you have, because if we can't tie your financial habits, your spending, your goals back to a why statement, you're actually going to do this.
Correct.
You're not going to do any of this. You're not going to focus on a budget. You're not going to save up for a vacation. You can't even tell me where you want to go on vacation. And so it's very, very rare that happens. For me, typically after asking some pertinent questions, you'll get to that why statement with someone, but it does happen where they don't have one.
Sure.
And
Sure it does.
Hers was just particularly related to just helping family members. And ultimately she did discover some things that she wanted to do, home ownership and things like that. But that why statement is what is driving you every day. It's what is driving how much you're spending at the grocery store. It's driving what college your kid is going to go to. If they're going to go to a community college for the first 2 years, if they live in a state where community college is free, and then 2 years of state school might be super cheap. Your why statement might be driving you to pay $100,000 for your kid to go to school each year. There might be a why statement that the answer to that why statement is that. But if you don't have that, it's going to be real hard to develop or change existing habits.
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I ask people is, from a what have you dreamed about and stopped? And what are you dreaming about now? And the answers obviously are varied, but I stopped dreaming about a house. I stopped dreaming about the vacation. I stopped. What are you dreaming about now? Getting through to the next paycheck. I dream about that I can make my 10-year-old car last another 2 years. And I say to people, okay, now we understand what your dreams were and are. If I could help you to dream all those things again, that sound good to you? Who's going to say no?
Right.
but then is where and now that you've hopefully built over their trust, now you get into the financials.
Right. Now you get into the black and white.
Let's move some money around. Existing money. Let's move some money around. Let's help maybe pay off some debt to free up some money for something else. If you do have extra, it could be as simple as, reduce the amount that you spend in Starbucks. I'm not saying you to stop. Reduce the amount in Starbucks. Reduce the amount of times that you go out to eat in a month. Do you need the $800 a month car payment? Can you make it $400? Do you need Hulu, Netflix, and 17 other channels? But based on each person, that's how you start to free up some money, pay down debt. Now there's more money. Now you start to get them into a position of, maybe I can get that new car. Maybe I can start to put money away for college. Maybe I can start to put money away for retirement. But every situation is different. But it's like I said, it's opening their eyes and seeing that aha moment.
Yeah, it's one of the things I say about what I do personally as a coach is that I help people master their income without dismantling their lifestyle. And you just nailed it with the Starbucks thing. That is like the number one example, right? I'm sure if anybody else is listening to this and they're a financial advisor or financial coach, they're laughing. But it's like the number one example because it's true of 9 out of 10 people we talk to. We don't want you to give up the Starbucks card.
Correct.
But do we need to go every day? And I actually had a client who I worked with last year. Their household's bringing in $250,000.
Nice. Okay.
And the first thing she said, the wife said, after we we took a while to get to
Mm.
to see what a budget was actually going to look like. It probably took about the first 3 months.
Mm.
Just because when you have more money coming in, more money is going out. I think a lot of people think, oh, if I just had more money. When you have more money coming in, there's more money going out. So it's actually can be significantly more complicated. So we're 3 months into coaching, and the wife looks at me and goes, I'm not going to Starbucks this week. And I didn't even ask her. I hadn't said the word Starbucks during the meeting. I wasn't on the page of her budget that said Starbucks. But it was this realization that, wow, there are other things our family wants to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And this $250 line for Starbucks in this budget is not helping accomplish Y. It's doing X, but it's not helping accomplish Y.
Correct.
And so it sometimes we don't even have to say it.
Mm-hmm.
The light bulb goes off without the words even passing our lips. And it's very rewarding when that kind of thing happens. And they can see really what could be if some little things change. We're not telling you to give up your car, period.
Right.
What would it look like if we turned in the car after this lease was over and got a Honda instead?
I had a client who had, I forget which credit card, and it was like a 30% rate. It was ridiculous. And because of the interest and the balance, they were paying minimum every month for a while. And I said to them, call up the company and say, look, you've been paying for a year, 2 years, whatever it is, every month. You have good credit rating. They like you because they're making all the interest. Can you lower the rate? So they called up the company, and the company said no.
Yep.
So my next course of action was the person got another credit card with a 12-month introductory 0 rate and transferred the balance. So now they started whatever their normal payment plus what they were paying towards the interest every month, on that minimum payment. Started to actually see the balance reduced. Again, the bulb goes off, and now they reduce the spending, going out to eat and Dunkin' in their case and whatever.
Yep.
And now that they're like really pushing it, and they watch the balance come down quick. So it does work, but every person is different. Every situation is different.
Yeah.
Get creative, but what works for them? What are their goals and dreams? Again, it doesn't matter what you and I want. It's what they want and need.
Exactly. Yeah. I love the balance transfer thing if we know that we have the commitment to paying it off in the 12 months. I'm sure we've all worked with the people who are like, I'm just going to transfer the balance. And I'm like, you don't really have the discipline to do that, but I'm not going to say it.
Right.
And as a coach, you have to kind of guide them in the right direction. But ultimately, all of our clients' decisions are their own.
Yeah.
We're just here to be kind of those guides on their journey through life, which by the way, guys, every part of life is affected by money. So
yeah, it is. And the more you know about it, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. So Steve, if you could go back in time with the franchising story, what would you do differently?
If I could go back in time, I absolutely would have put down the 20%. Well, it's a two-part answer. One is I would have put down the 20% and kept the 80% for working capital. But the other thing I would have done, which I, again, didn't do, was to put that franchise or that company into a corporation so that it's separate from my personal. So even if, and again, I'm not an attorney and I don't know all the laws, I will tell you that up front. But what I do know as a general statement, you put something in a corporation, it's separate legally, financially from you. So even if worst case, it does go south, at least you're not caught up. You're not going to be brought to court. You're not going to go after your personal assets. You'll have something left to fight tomorrow and, fight the next day. So that would be the big thing that I would say. I would also say, I guess, as a part 3, if you're not sure about anything, anything financially related, signing a lease for an apartment, certainly a mortgage, a car loan, anything, going into business. If you're not sure, find someone who has the experience. And with all due respect to Uncle Joe or Aunt Mary, those are not the people you want to talk to. You want a licensed financial professional in whatever field you're looking at. An attorney, a CPA, whatever. Find that licensed, reputable person and run it by them. One of the things that that I use, and I don't know whether I should say this or not, but I'm going to. Sorry, I'm going to. I have a paid subscription to Legal Shield.
Oh yes, yep, I've heard of it. And I've recommended it to a few people where it was I don't want to say required, but it was a better idea for them to have that kind of on. And it's basically what it is. If you guys don't know, it's a I don't know, call it a subscription, but you kind of keep you kind of pay a little bit of a retainer fee every month. And then if a question comes up, a legal question comes up, you have access to an attorney to answer that question for you.
So the reason I make that statement as general for everything we're talking about now, I signed up for Legal Shield a couple of years ago. And in New York, where prices are a bit on the high side, I went through Legal Shield and got my will, my power of attorney, and my healthcare proxy.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know they did that stuff. Yes. That's so funny.
So the three of those in New York would have been somewhere around $2,500.
Oh, I was going to say $3,000 minimum. Yeah.
I spend $30 a month for Legal Shield. So a year later, when I needed to update my will, it cost me that same $30 a month.
Wow.
I did not have to go back and spend $2,000 just to update the will.
Just to update it, right.
So back to my statement, if you have anything business related, personal related, whatever, that's an option for a low cost to keep you out of hot water. Because if you make the wrong decision, it could cost you for years like it did to me. And I don't want that to happen to you. That's why I'm telling everybody this, because I want them to have the best possible chance financially for success.
I love it. That's great. I actually did not know Legal Shield did that. I've typically only recommended it to my small business clients for that reason alone. If you have a small business, whatever they charge.
They'll review a lease for a house. They'll review, and it's how did somebody phrase it? An attorney on call for $30 a month.
Yeah, it's a good product. Definitely. I've seen it come in handy before. And that's a great example of updating a will in New York is not cheap. I have lost both of my parents who both passed away in New York, and it's not cheap.
Yeah. So did mine, both in New York. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve, this has been a great conversation. Very enlightening. I know people are going to get a lot out of it. So good. I hope everybody tunes in next week for another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. And thanks again for being here, Steve.
Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate it. Have a great day.